Well, we're back again with another favorites video. So let's just get into my favorite things from July. I'm actually pretty excited about this one because I have 4 books to talk about. 4? I think 4. Oh, I just made that worse. The first book that I have here is Nimona by Noelle Stevenson. This is not a new book, obviously. It's new to me though, because I just read it in July. And this was fantastic. I loved absolutely everything about this. It was just a delight. It's a graphic novel with gorgeous illustrations, great colors, and a wonderful story. So Nimona takes place in a medieval fantasy world that has modern technology. And it follows Nimona, who has decided that she wants to be the sidekick of the city's supervillain. The supervillain doesn't need a sidekick. He's like, I don't need a sidekick, and also, you're breaking all the rules. There are rules. And she's like, but we're villains. There are no rules. Let's do murder. Nimona can also shapeshift, which is pretty cool. And she, without realizing what she's doing, she helps the villain realize things about himself. And it's more than just a superhero villain story. There's a whole deeper level to it, and it's also really funny. I don't want to get into what the deeper level of it is. I think you should just read it. I think it's kind of difficult to give like an in-depth summary on something that's so short. I think that you should just read it and find out what that stuff is for yourself as you're reading it. But it was so good. It was so funny. It was nice, it was deep, it was fun, it was just great. It was great. I had such a good time reading this. The next book that I have here is Godkiller by Hannah Kaner, which was also amazing. Obviously, that's why I'm talking about it. But this takes place in a world where there is a god for pretty much every little thing that you could think of. But this takes place after a war where gods have since been outlawed, basically. It's illegal to worship these gods and essentially illegal to be a god. And one of the main characters that it follows is a Godkiller. It is her job to kill gods and have them cease to exist. And it follows a group of people who are traveling together to a city that still has a lot of gods living in it, and they all have different reasons for wanting to go to this city, but they all are helping each other get there. So there's the Godkiller. There's also a young girl that the Godkiller feels the need to protect who has a god with her. And there's somebody who fought in the war against the gods and is friends with the king. And a few different interesting characters that are traveling together for different reasons. It is definitely a quiet story. There isn't a lot of action, but when there is, it's really fun and exciting. But it does focus a lot on the characters and their struggles and their thoughts and how they're going to overcome them. There's a little bit of a twisty mystery to the story as well. And it's just, I loved the writing. I loved all the characters' thoughts, getting into all the characters' heads, how they all have different thoughts and opinions on like the same situation. And I loved the narrative surrounding the gods and how contradictory it was. About how the gods don't actually help people and they're just selfish and they just feed off of people worshiping them. But how they also do help people and they help people get through things and pass difficult times in their lives. And it was such... I felt like it was such an interesting narrative, and I enjoyed everything about it. It was so good. I definitely would like to read the sequel. The next one that I have is Heir, apparently, by Kara McDowell, which is a sequel to The Prince and the Apocalypse. I can't really tell you much about what this is about, because I don't want to give anything away from the first book, in case you haven't read it, because this is a direct sequel to it. But I read The Prince and the Apocalypse last year, and I thought it was so cute and so much fun. And when I heard that there was a sequel coming out, I just had to get my hands on it. And I read it pretty much as soon as I got it, and it did not disappoint. It's just cute and silly and fun. Like, the storyline is so far-fetched, but it's so much fun. It's just fantastic. It also had pretty decent type 1 diabetes rep in it, which is pretty fun. And there is a part in it where they're in Canada, in Toronto. They go to High Park. So that was fun too. That's not why I loved it though. Those were just fun bonuses. The story was just cute and silly and funny and just so much fun, adventurous. I find Kara McDowell's books just so easy to keep reading. They're like candy. Like you start reading it and it's so hard to stop. The writing flows so nicely, and the writing's like fairly casual that it feels like you're just hanging out with friends, and you just slip into the next chapter and the next chapter and the next chapter so easily. So if you like cutesy romances, YA romances, please check out this author. All of her books are fabulous. She deserves more hype than she's getting, for sure. Her books are just fantastic. And the last book that I have here to talk about is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston was actually one of my favorite reads from 2023, and my friend was buying some books on Book Outlet and asked me if there was anything that I wanted to add to her order so that she could get free shipping and spend less money. And I saw this book, didn't even know what it was about, but it was by Ashley Poston, and I was like, that one, I want that one. Ashley Poston is so good at writing romances that have a paranormal or fantastical element to them that it feels real. And it's so good. So The 7-Year Slip is about somebody who lives in a magical apartment that randomly, with no warning or explanation, will take you back 7 years in the past in that apartment. Once you leave the apartment, you're back in the future again. And the apartment is the one who decides when you go back and how long you go back and like how long it will last. So anyway, the main character in this book has just lost her aunt who used to own this apartment, and she's just started living in this apartment. And one day she wakes up in the apartment 7 years ago, and there's a guy there who is subletting the apartment for the summer, and romance ensues, obviously. And it's not like a now and then story. It's because she's literally going back in time randomly. So like sometimes she goes into the apartment, oh, it's 7 years ago, and the guy's there, and sometimes she goes into the apartment and it's not 7 years ago and she's there alone. And then other things happen that I don't want to tell you about. You just have to read it because it's so good. And it's so sweet. And it's funny, and it's, again, just like the last book I talked about, it's just so easy to keep reading. You just slip into the next chapter and the next chapter, and you're like, oh my god, I've been reading for 3 hours, like, so good. I need all of Ashley Poston's books. Next thing I'm going to talk about is a movie, and hopefully is no surprise that it is Nimona. I watched the movie almost immediately after reading the graphic novel, and the movie is very different from the graphic novel. The story is very different. I was going to say it's similar. There are similar aspects, and there are scenes that they pulled from the graphic novel that are almost the same, but happen for different reasons, or in different ways, or in different parts of the story. And there are things that, like, I could tell what scene it was that they were doing from the book, even though it was different. But even though it was pretty different, it had the same vibes, and it was so much fun, and it was so funny, and a little bit nicer. Like the story in the comic is about someone who is a supervillain sidekick, and in the movie, it's about someone who is the sidekick of someone who people think is a villain, but he's not. He's a good guy. Who doesn't want to be a villain, isn't trying to be a villain, where in the comic he is a villain. Like, he's like the Joker or whatever, except he's not. He's whatever his character's name in the book is, I forget. So the story and like the kind of deep parts of it are a little bit different, and the way things happen are quite different, but it was still like, it still had the same heart, you know? And that, to me, is what counts the most in an adaptation. Like, it is great to have a book-to-movie adaptation, or a video game-to-movie adaptation, or whatever, where they don't stray far from the source material. That's obviously ideal. But what is also ideal is that they keep the same atmosphere and they give you the same feelings. Like when I read the book and when I watched the movie, I had the same feelings. It was great. The artwork and the animation was incredible. It was so much fun. It was well acted. It had great music. It was just it was a great time, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would read the comic again. I would watch the movie again. It was a great time. I thought they did a really good job. And then I want to talk about a TV show. It is a TV show I have talked about before in my favorites videos, actually kind of recently. I think a couple months ago I was talking about them. But it's about a different part of the show. So that's RuPaul's Drag Race. But specifically, the finale of season 12 and all of season 14. So the finale of season 12 I want to talk about because... So I used to love RuPaul's Drag Race. I mean, I still do, but there was a time in my life where I was obsessed. I mean, I'm obsessed with it now, but anyway, I was previously obsessed with it, and then it went away, and I'm obsessed with it again. But anyway, the first time I was watching through it and was watching it anytime there was a new season, I did not finish season 12 because when it was airing was when the pandemic hit. And it was filmed in 2019 and was airing in 2020. So the reunion and the finale, which are normally filmed after the rest of the season has aired, were not able to be filmed in person because it was like height of the pandemic when everyone was in lockdown. So they did the reunion on like Zoom or whatever. And I watched the reunion. But it kind of put me in this like downer mood because I was just fully reminded of the fact that everything sucked. And I wanted to escape from all of that. So while the reunion was still like nice to see, I guess, it didn't make me feel good. And it made me stressed and it made me depressed and I didn't want to watch the finale. I didn't want to watch a finale of people having to communicate through the computer. And I didn't think it was going to be really good. I didn't know how it could be super entertaining. I needed to be entertained and taken away from the pandemic. So I didn't watch the finale of season 12. And that's kind of when I stopped watching RuPaul's Drag Race because I kind of forgot about it after that, I guess, by the time the next season came out. I got my mom into RuPaul's Drag Race a few months ago, if you've seen my previous favorites videos, and we started with season 15 and 16, which are the two newest seasons. And then after we finished those, we went back from the beginning, and we've been watching them all. So we got to season 12, and we finished season 12, and the finale was amazing. I still think it probably wouldn't have been good for me to watch at that point in time. I don't like regret not watching it at that point in time, but I did think the finale of season 12 was going to be the same as the reunion, which it was not. The reunion was literally like, pieces of the screen was a different person and they were just talking, like they were having like a Zoom call, right? But they put in so much effort and tried so hard to make this finale good, and it was, I think, my favorite finale ever. They were so creative, and they did a bunch of different things to make the lip sync battles fair because everyone was doing it in their home. They also had different challenges that they never would have been given if they were like in the studio, and they had like fun graphics on the screen, and the queens did such a good job. They were so creative, and it was so much fun. It was so much fun. They did such a good job. They were so limited with what they could do to make this finale good, and they blew it out of the water. Like, it was fantastic. And then season 14, all of season 14, because season 14 had such strong contestants. Like, all of the queens were so talented. Like, literally almost every single episode, my mom and I were like, who the fuck are they going to send home? Everyone did amazing. Like, everyone was amazing. Like, if I was RuPaul, I'd be like, you all stay. Everyone gets a crown this year. And it was so entertaining because everyone was so talented, and it was just, also some of the challenges were new challenges that we hadn't seen on the show before, and they were incredibly well done, not only because the queens were all super talented, but they were all just put together really well, and they were so funny. Like, I think that's the most I've laughed during RuPaul's Drag Race, because a lot of the stuff is supposed to be funny, but sometimes it's not that funny. But it was very funny in this season. Everything was fantastic. They all did an amazing job. And was great. And then now we're watching All Stars, which is also great, but the finale of season 12 was fantastic. All of season 14, fantastic, because everyone on the show was fantastic. Like, congratulations to the cast of season 14 for being fucking fabulous. Like, oh, I have one more thing. It's not really a favorite, but it's a thing I'm going to talk about. I'll be right back. Maybe this is something that can be one of your guys' favorites. But anyway, I have a new book out. It's called Between Two Worlds. And if anyone from here follows me on TikTok, most of you don't. It's based on my first ever fiction skit series that I did on TikTok, except this goes way more into the story and the characters than this TikTok series does. But if anyone who saw that would be fun to know that there's a book. Everyone wanted me to turn it into a book, and I did, and it was the most fun I've ever had writing a first draft. So anyway, I'll read the back to you, because I'm not very good at explaining what it's about, because it's hard to explain. So I'll read the back. Aspen and Jack have always dreamed of going to Mars. Before they even knew that it was a possibility, if the two weren't helping each other study, they were watching sci-fi movies together. So when the Mars group announced that they were building a community away from Earth, Jack and Aspen vowed to graduate from university and both get jobs there. But over 10 years later, the two have gone their separate ways. Aspen is a physician for the Mars group, but instead of working on Mars, she's stuck on Earth doing physical exams for people applying to the program. And when Jack walks into her exam room as an applicant, it catches them both off guard. It's almost too easy for them to reconnect, and they fall into step with each other so effortlessly, just like in university. But things didn't work out so well for them then, and Aspen's afraid that this time it'll be no different. Or worse, that if she gets close to him again, watching him move to another planet will hurt her more than she can handle. And anyway, it's pretty gorgeous inside. You can order it from all the Amazons, Barnes & Noble, Waterstones, Books A Million, Indigo at some point. It's not available on Indigo. This book has been out for almost an entire month, and it's still not up on Indigo. It will be available at some point from Indigo, but you can get it from everywhere else, basically. You can also order it from your favorite independent bookstore, and you should get it, because it's really good. Okay, that's all I have for you now. So, have a good day. Bye.